Hello, I'm Drew Badger, the co-founder of EnglishAnyone.com, and we are back with part 2 of this special 2-part video about Japanese tea and Japanese gardens. If you haven't seen part 1 already, you can click right here and it will take you back to watch that. But if you're coming from part 1, then just sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Now, we've just finished some tea, but I really want to show you something that's much more important to me, something that I came out here to study. This is the reason I came to Japan, and this is the Japanese garden. Now, I know it's a very iconic thing about Japan, and I think the reason I got into it initially many years ago when I was a child is because of the mathematics that are behind Japanese gardens. So I want to talk about that first, talk about a little bit of garden design, and also you can see, again, I mentioned a little bit in the tea video how because the Japanese home is built out of wood, you've got long walls and you have kind of shorter homes that makes for a much more kind of picture frame window. So the Japanese garden is really designed to be viewed from inside the home. That's why if you walk around in a lot of Japanese neighborhoods, you'll see high walls everywhere, and it maybe just kind of looks like a big concrete area. But as soon as you go into the wall or go kind of you pass through the gate or you're inside the home, you'll be able to sit in a situation like this where you've got a lovely open space here, and it's a large, almost like kind of like a picture frame movie where you can look outside and you've got really very little distinction between the outside and the inside. So I don't even have a screen here. I can lean right out and I'm still like got the inside and the outside right here. So we're going to go in and take a look at the garden. I'm actually going to put on some of these Japanese slippers. These are called zori, and I'm going to, because I don't have actual special kind of socks for that today, I'm going to make some special ones right now. Watch this. Okay. All right, so let's slip these on. Now, there are kind of two parts to this garden. Usually there is a more kind of secluded one or a protected one that's just for the people that are in the home or in that particular tea room. Oh, these shoes are a little bit small. I've gotten used to that out here in Japan. I'm just going to walk over here. There are some rocks because I want to show you something about Japanese garden design. And you can see when people do the designs for the rocks, even the height of the rocks and the space, it's all about being proportional. So it's really about mathematics, and all of the different plants that you use, these are important to Japanese design, and a lot of them that are kind of indigenous or they're local plants, you would be using those in the garden. But the real thing that makes a Japanese garden is really the mathematics that are under it. So even something like this, you would see the flat area from this rock is going nicely with the flat area from this rock right here. Because if you have a point going into this one, it's kind of disturbing to the eye. So if you really want to have something that's nice and pleasing, you can look right here and see how the edge of each one of these stones has a nice kind of parallel feel to it. So I'm walking here and it's nice and easy. Each one of these, you see as they turn, it's still that nice parallel line here. So I'm walking over here again. I just want to get some of the rocks out here so I can show you something interesting about Japanese design. Now, if I'm going to build a Japanese garden from scratch, so from scratch means to do something from the very beginning, really the Japanese garden is different from a Western garden in that it's not really designed around symmetry. You want to have balance, which means that if I have like a rectangle and I have, kind of a typical like a Western garden, you would have, something, if you go to like an English garden where you've got beautiful flowers everywhere, it's meant to be viewed from up high. So you can look at it. Again, we've got the difference between a Japanese home that's made out of wood that's got long windows so you can sit inside and look at it from the inside, or you've got a house made of stone or like a castle, something like that, that's got very thin windows because you just can't have a long area with wide windows when you're working with stone. So if we're looking at the top of a garden, we've got maybe like a rectangular area like this, and we've got some flowers here and some flowers here, and then we've got symmetry. So this symmetry means we've got the same thing on both sides here. And it's balanced, but it's not particularly interesting because, well, it's kind of easy to make. So part of what Japanese garden design is made out of is the golden ratio. And the golden ratio is a thing that you'll see in nature. It's all over the place, and it's kind of the like the Fibonacci numbers, the Fibonacci sequence, where you've got 3, 5, 7, and then like it spirals out that way. And you'll see it everywhere. It could be in the shape of a flower, or in like population numbers. It's kind of technical, but basically it's more pleasing to the eye if you begin with something like a triangle. So if you are the front here and I'm going to design something, you've got kind of like the 3, 5, 7 angle, and we'll move these stones around so you can see how this looks. But we've got, if you were to take like a basic, just using 2 stones to begin with, and I've got a like a lever like this. So I've got like a lever with a point in the middle, and it can balance like this. Now I can take a big rock here and the same rock on this other side, and I've got the balance point in the middle, and basically you've got balance. But again, it's like that kind of Western garden where it's got balance and it's got symmetry, but it's just not that interesting. But if I were to take a Japanese garden design, I would take that same idea where I've got a balance point here where you can put a really large stone here, but then a really tiny stone all the way over here. You've got balance again, but again, it's not symmetrical. So it's not the same thing on both sides, and it becomes more interesting that way. So what we're going to do, instead of having 2 rocks together on a single line, we're going to create a triangle with these. So you're coming from the front, and we would start with like 1 rock here, 1 rock here, and then 1 rock here. Now you notice that each of these is kind of on its own line. They're not crossing each other. And then the space between each of these things, and again, like you can kind of move them around. You don't have to be exact about it, but you'll see this spacing in nature. So the size of this, and the size of that, and the size of this, and the distances between all of these are really what make up a pleasing garden to the eye. So if you're sitting here and you're looking at the garden this way, you can really see what it looks like, where you've got kind of like a balance point here, this half of the garden and this half of the garden, and then you can see if we were to move these things around, how it becomes less balanced or more balanced, or trying to find the ideal placement for all of these things. So when you look at gardens, especially something like Ryoanji, which is a really popular garden in Kyoto, this is like one of the big rock gardens, and I believe it's a World Heritage Site actually, where you've just got basically a big open area with the regular gravel kind of like this, and then a few rocks. It's basically just this kind of mathematics. So we'll go out into the actual garden over here and we'll take a look and see what some of that looks like. Okay, now we're going to actually walk out into the garden. So I showed you kind of that design before. Remember, we're seeing again that same style here. We've got the rocks that are coming together. You see there's nice clean parallel lines there, and we're going to walk out and see all of the beautiful kinds of trees that we can find out here. Lots of lovely, again, like it's ornamental, but really the garden is designed from a skeleton, and then you put all of the plants in after that. So that's when you're actually building a garden, you would build it that way. You would begin with the design, figure out where all the rocks go, and then you move in to put the plants in after that. So let's take a look. You can actually take a look from over here and see that same path that goes into where we were just having the tea ceremony over there. So it's a really lovely view, whether you're sitting inside the room or you're standing outside, and you're taking a look at how everything kind of flows together. So this is a really nice garden because it's also got a koi pond, and koi are the large ornamental goldfish or carp. So we're going to take a look at those as well. Now you don't necessarily have to have one of those in the pond, but really the point of having Japanese koi, or these goldfish in the pond, is just to add a little bit of color. If you look around, you've got kind of the contrast between lots of the greenery, and you'll see some flowers in Japanese gardening, but really like the Japanese garden is designed to be beautiful all year long. So even if there are some trees that lose their leaves, you'll have others like the pine tree that have needles all year. So most of the things, again, you'll see a few flowers here and there. These are just for accents. Really, you want to have a nice lush garden if that's the style you're going for, and then you've got the rocks and the dirt to contrast with that. But then when we take a look at some of the koi over here, you'll get to see these right now, and these are really just to add a lot of kind of bright color and then actual movement to the garden, because we don't have something, obviously the trees aren't moving around, they're not walking and jumping and saying hello or anything. So we've got some lovely fish And we can come in and right here. See, the fish will actually talk to you. If you can see him right there, he says, hello. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my garden. Give me some food. So they're all coming over. We can actually walk on this little bridge over here, get a nice view of them. And you can get a really good view of these fish. Now, some of these can get actually quite large and really expensive, and there are lots of different varieties. But again, you can see how they're just in there to add a little bit of movement to the garden and really just to add some nice color. So everything else in the garden is really green, and then you've got these lovely orange or gold colors in the gardens that are coming out from here. Now, if you look at the rocks again, let's see if we can find a nice one. We're going to turn around and look over here. That same design I was talking about before, the garden design might look complicated, but really we're building a garden from triangles and other geometric shapes that just look pleasing to the eye, because that's the Fibonacci ratio, the lines and the ideas that really just are just very visually pleasing. So we've got a large stone here and another one here, and then we anchor the garden like that. And then once we get that design, we can start putting in other things like that. So we'll move back over here. Now we're over at a waterfall. Hopefully you can hear me pretty well. It's a little bit loud. Now there will be lots of different designs in waterfalls, but really the Japanese style waterfall is trying to actually design, it's kind of designed to mimic a real waterfall. Now what's tricky about this is that unless you're living at a place where you've got an actual mountain where you can have something coming down, it's really hard to make something that looks like a waterfall. Now this is designed the way it is because it really feels like you've got a hill here and an actual waterfall coming down from it. So this is, again, even though the mind is, understanding that this is not a real waterfall, this is not a natural waterfall, the design is like this to mimic the natural waterfall style, and that's what is really pleasing and relaxing to people. What you'll often see in gardens is you'll have kind of a mound. It's almost like a water volcano where people will design something and you can see that there's nothing that it's like actually coming down from. So a lot of Japanese designs, they will have it so that even if it's a mound like this, you can't really tell that this is the top. The water could be coming from another location, and the water is usually looking like it's turning from another location. So again, it's kind of tricking the mind that the waterfall is actually a real waterfall. And now if you come over here and look a bit more closely, you can see there are elements in here you really want to have. Not only like the sound of the waterfall is important, but how the water is actually moving. And you really want to think, especially when you're designing waterfalls and rivers, that you really want to make sure that the flow of the water is the way it would flow in the real world. So if you have something like this and you've got like a long piece of rock that would be coming out that way, it would not be pleasing to the eye, because everybody would kind of know intuitively that the water would come through and the water would break that down. So always you're looking at something where you see the water coming down and the water goes this way and then that way, and it goes around rocks and then goes out into the actual garden here. And it looks like the fish are back looking for some more food over here. These are some very smart fish, I think. Yes, I'm sorry. Oh no. And you can see we've got some lovely Japanese pine trees over here. These are some of the things that I came to study. You can zoom in on those and you can see a little bit, depending on the type of year, usually these will be pruned. You will trim the leaves of those maybe twice a year. And then really you're wanting to create that lovely kind of cascading look of the pine tree in the same way that you get that from, the Japanese maple, which is the other tree over here on the left. So these are kind of the typical things when you think of a Japanese garden. You're thinking of a momiji, so that's the Japanese garden, typical Japanese maple tree, and then you've got the pine tree, and there are different varieties of that as well. And then you've got a few other things that are kind of anchoring it, and little things like this little pagoda looking lantern thing. Like, this isn't necessarily typical. You don't have to have that. It doesn't necessarily make something a Japanese garden. Again, you begin with the math and then you work up to things like plants and other little ornamental things like that. So there's probably a light in that, and in the evening it's probably very nice over here. So this is the whole reason I came to Japan, and even though I haven't yet started learning how to build water gardens, I know how to build the kind of dry things, and I can actually build and design something like this. So I look forward, while I continue to make more videos for you and everyone else out there on YouTube, really learning to come back and enjoy all of the koi and the other things. And we've got a whole bunch of them right here. Let's look at all these guys. They all look pretty hungry, I guess. I'm sorry I didn't save any of my tea snack for you guys. But I really hope you have enjoyed this video, and I look forward to showing you many more things about Japan. If there are more things specifically you'd like to know about, again, even in a Japanese garden or even pruning particular trees, there's lots of very refined things you can go into, even about like the carpentry that goes into the wood. Lots of different things, how you select the rocks, all of these different things, even about a garden. It's actually quite technical, and there's a lifetime that's really required to learn all of these things. But I hope this video has been helpful, especially if you're interested in Japanese gardens, to really just begin. Even try, if you have a garden in your own home and you want to try building something, begin with the mathematics, play with some stones, and see if you can find a kind of nice golden ratio where you've got a lovely triangle, and then try putting a few flowers around that, and take a look at some videos and other images online that might help you find some interesting designs for your own home. Well, again, this has been Drew Badger for EnglishAnyone.com. If you have any questions, please post them below, or if there's other things about either gardening or other things about Japan that you'd like to learn more about, let me know in the comments. If you've enjoyed this, please like it and share it with other people, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.